a dismal day on the JSE. We were down around 0.9%. We're seeing those miners really coming under pressure. It seems as though there's a massive focus coming to the fore when it comes to windfall taxes in Peru. It seems that AngloGold Ashanti also came out not too long ago, in fact a couple of minutes ago, about
Tanzania.
Of course Tanzania, saying in fact that no taxes are going to be imposing on the agreements on the life of mine at this point in time. Of course, we're still waiting to hear more info on that. But your view on the markets in today's session, particular focus when it comes to those resource companies?
Yeah, all taking a heavy beating. But I mean, that's in large part, the copper price was down about 2% overnight, so not unexpected, I guess. But I mean, I think if you want to come back to that mining tax issue, because I think, you know, these countries need to think about this seriously, because Venezuela and all, you know, Chavez's genius having imposed all the nationalization on all the oil companies, Venezuela produces a whole lot less oil 10 years later after the implementation of all these social rhetoric.
So in other words, a direct correlation with the taxes that are implemented and production.
100%. You're just going to chase skills away and achieve exactly the opposite of what you're trying to achieve. And it's an interesting conversation, because if you want to talk about revenue collection, see what the Republicans' probably top candidate in the US, Tom Pawlenty, is proposing. And in fact, you know, we saw that proposal this afternoon our time. In fact, he's saying we should lower corporate tax rate. We should lower individuals' tax rate. Why? Because that's going to attract investment ultimately. So I think these countries need to take a serious, hard look at themselves and note that there are other places to mine resources across Africa.
Well, I suppose if everyone implements these kind of taxes, nowhere to run, is there, Sasha? But look, AngloGold Ashanti down 3%. I mentioned a little earlier in terms of that press release that
Goldfields
was out.
Under 100, Harmony under 90.
Harmony down 4.6%. Goldfields, we know that they were under the spotlight yesterday because of the tax that could be implemented in Peru, that will be implemented in Peru. That stock down 2.6%. An opportunity to buy these stocks. I know that you're averse to gold miners, Sasha, but would you say it's an opportunity, or would you wait to see the impact on these kind of taxes on the companies?
Yeah, it's interesting. Someone tweeted this afternoon that Goldfields had underperformed, the Goldfields share price has underperformed the Rand gold price by about 30% this year. And in Peru, it had underperformed the currency there by 25%. So what is actually happening here? Well, I mean, these guys are serial underperformers because of all the aforementioned things that have been kind of regurgitated over and over and over on this channel. You know, the costs are rising, and in fact, remember that you know, Eskom said that maybe they'd be looking to NERSA for an above what they agreed on hike in electricity prices. So obviously, this is going to impact on the local miners here too.
With regards to the top of the top 40, we saw ABSA gaining 0.7%, MTN enjoying gains as well, Nedbank also on the front foot. So pretty much a mixed bag, but let's focus on the financial stocks, because ABSA and Nedbank having quite a nice little boost today. Any particular reason that we're seeing positivity there, Sasha?
Maybe because Jamie Dimon's finally standing up to Ben Bernanke. No, interesting. In fact, I mean, Jamie Dimon talked about over-regulation and actually asked Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke a direct question in a public forum. You know, I'm sure he's asked him this offline before, but asking him in a public forum and looking for an answer of sorts. Now, you know, at the risk of sounding kind of all smug about it, we've often said that over-regulation in the long term, with the implementation of too stricter rules in the form of Basel III, will crimp banks' profitability going into the future. And perhaps, but as I often say, you know, somewhere in the pipeline, financial crisis, just yet another one, is probably being formulated as we speak. So, not a particularly big fan of the big banks as investments, because often I
don't hold any banks.
Well, just the African bank, but that's just a pure consumer finance. So it's a little bit different from the big banks.
Let's delve into Exxaro. The stock down 0.6% today. We know Deutsche Bank placed a buy on it after it was on hold. We know it's got to do with the momentum and the price increases that we could be seeing on the heavy metals side of things. This company under pressure today, perhaps because a strike is imminent. We know the National Union of Mine Workers has been very vocal today, not only when it comes to Exxaro, but of course Metorex, which we'll come to later as well. But do you think overall Exxaro a good buy?
Yeah, look, we don't own it in our core portfolios, but have owned it at the fringes for a long, long time, since the split from Kumba Resources. So you've got Kumba Iron Ore and Exxaro Resources on the one side. Interesting that coal, in terms of overall value, makes up more of our exports than platinum, and gold now falls into third place. So obviously, coal is becoming more and more important, and interesting to see the Germans suggesting that they're going to be moving away from nuclear power. So perhaps now coal, not being that dirty, is suddenly still the cheapest option to generate electricity. So I don't know. I mean, the future for these coal mining companies and the long-term contracts, interestingly, that Exxaro have with the main monopoly here, obviously bodes well for them into the future. It all depends on where you see the coal price in the short to medium term, and there's clearly very strong demand for, and in fact, if we had better export capacity at Richards Bay, then I guess we would be able to export a lot more.
Metorex also gaining ground today. The stock up 0.7%, and big names involved when it comes to Metorex. We hear the words Vale, we hear the words Glencore, and now we know the National Union of Mine Workers opposed to the deal with the likes of Vale.
Just remind me why they're opposed to the deal?
Because they apparently believe that Vale is not a unionized company.
Yeah, but what's it got to do with the South African National Union of Mine Workers?
Well, Sasha, you're not interviewing me, I'm interviewing you. Perhaps you could answer that for me.
No, where are Metorex's operations? That's all simply what I'm trying to say. I mean, I think they're far off and just want to oppose anything and everything without even having a closer look. So all I'm saying is it's not very smart of them to oppose something that's happening up in the DRC, because, you know, this affects shareholders here in Johannesburg, but doesn't really affect too many National Union of Mine Workers members. So I think it's a little bit childish.
All right, let's delve further into the story with Vale, and here's more on that.
Exxaro, we're very disappointed. The strike is proceeding. It's beginning Monday. We're disappointed that they failed really to engage us. Coal price is doing very well. The export market and demand in Eskom, we found it very, very silly that they chose to lay off in the process when everybody is in a campaign of getting people to be employed.
Oh, there, Frans Baleni actually talking about the strike that will come through for Exxaro. So it seems that the unions, again, very vocal in terms of regulation in the industry, competition. I suppose it's good to have that alternative voice at the end of the day, Sasha.
No, absolutely. I think the National Union of Mine Workers play a very important role in our economy as being vocal. But to be perfectly honest, I think they need to come to the realization that the cost pressures have increased dramatically over the last 5 years because of Eskom, because of labour negotiations, and the starting point is just getting higher and higher and higher, even though inflation is, seems to be on a downward trajectory and seems to be bottoming out about 4%. You can't walk in and say, oh, we want X, Y, Z. It'll put companies under pressure, and they'll say, well, I can't properly mine this deposit because it's too expensive for me. So what's the alternative? I'm not too sure that, it's very well thought through.
Well, let's take a look at what the National Union of Mine Workers had to say about Vale.
We are opposed to this because of the history of this company, which is an anti-union company, bashing union in Canada, Mexico. We have a long list of injuries or harm which this company has caused in many parts of the globe.
So in terms of your resource play at this point, given the fact that there is a lot of uncertainty, what is your preferred pick? Yeah,
I just want to remind Frans Baleni that, Vale has exports something like 380 million tons of iron ore per annum through Brazil. So perhaps he should be looking closer to home in Brazil, a socialist country, a semi-socialist country. Our preferred pick is still BHP Billiton, because it's diversified geographically, and as Maurice Kloppers often points out, tier 1 assets, and it looks relatively cheap at this juncture. But I think a lot of people are uncertain about, as you talk about the asset prices, nobody's quite sure whether or not the liquidity, the excess liquidity did create bubbles. So your comrade Paul Turan is away. Yes, so he's in the Drakensberg where there's snow.
So no mad markets, but I think let's go onto that path just for a little bit. Meredith Whitney, and very well known for the fact that she got a lot of the rhetoric right during the crisis, prior to the crisis, about where we were headed with regards to the debt scenarios. She came out today, spoke about municipal defaults still coming to the fore, something that she's been talking about for some time now and still hasn't really materialized.
Problem is, you must never call the end of the world trade, because invariably it always works against you. That's what I saw someone say about her call on municipal bonds. And what she's ignoring is that municipal revenue is actually picking up quite markedly, as are federal collections in the US. I saw the individual tax collection picked up something like 28%. So maybe she was right 2-3 years ago, but things have changed quite quickly. So I wouldn't put too much on what Meredith was right once on Citigroup, but have been wrong on muni bonds so far.
Okay, very quickly, the MACD's barometer. Are you taking cognizance of the fact that we're seeing stronger growth coming through in Africa, in Asia, and the Middle East for McDonald's, and subdued growth for the US and Europe?
Yeah, Europe was really firing on all cylinders for McDonald's, and you know, it's a nice barometer to use because everyone buys it and it's kind of cheap in your own currency. So these fall-offs in May, I guess they've got a lot to do with sentiment specifically. And you can imagine if you're a European, even cheap food is likely not to get any cheaper anytime soon. And if you're in America, I don't know. I mean, they're growing sales at 2.5% per annum. I mean, that's not all bad, but our region, nearly 5%. So,
isn't it their staple food in the US? I shouldn't be mean. Thank you.
Shouldn't
so
be
much,
mean
Sasha.
about McDonald's, no.